Good morning. X Winterview is back again. It's Monday. No, where's the weekend gone? No fair. It's a nice morning though, as I drive to work in Das Auto. Apologies for the quality of the audio once again. Sounds of traffic passing, sounds of engine revving, and so forth. This brief dialogue is on making your life work. How does that work? How does that happen? Once again, another brief dialogue with my dear friend Annastacey. So, we start as we always do, with the self-centeredness. Interesting expression in the English language, to be self-centered. Has a negative connotation. It implies somehow that you're selfish and uncaring. But in this context, the self-center is the imagined self at the center of existence, this person in the middle of it all, to whom life is happening. In this apparent world that the person lives in, it's a world of space and time where there's things to get and acquire, to have in order to survive. The survival of the body, you could say, is contingent on some mastery over the space-time realm. Let's just say it's a nice story. And within that space-time realm of survival and so forth, there's an intelligence, you could say. Once again, remembering all these terms and terminology I'm using is provisional, just descriptors of an appearance. And within this survival mode, we could say, we kind of know what we need most of the time to survive, and there's lots of research on that. But we all know the basics, don't we? Anything that makes the body panic is probably somehow needed or perceived to be needed for your survival. So we've got air, check. Water, check. Food, check. Pretty much the three basics. Fuel for the body, you could say. Especially air, it's kind of super duper important. Don't survive very long without air. Then we can start moving up the pyramid of needs, the hierarchy, Maslow's hierarchy. If you like, it's a fine model. Why not borrow it for this dialogue? Got shelter and security and so forth. The basic bodily needs, clothing, weather-appropriate clothing, anything that could kill you. You pretty much want to have that handled. Once we've got the basics in check, we then decide, in quotes, to make life work a little bit more in alignment with pleasure, feeling good. It's interesting though that when individuals are in a survival situation, a survival crisis, they tend not to feel that good. They're not rewarded for being in that critical state. So there seems to be some design features of the organism that steer you away from getting yourself into these crises. I don't know how you'd run out of air, but that would be a crisis somehow. Diving underwater, there you go, there's an example. So the body would prefer it if you didn't do that. It tends to stay away from water if it can't swim. And so on and so forth. I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, so anything that is positive for the body or for the survival of the organism is also linked very strongly with the welfare emotions or the feel-good feelings, such that it seems to be a way of directing the organism to gain what it needs to survive. That's the nutshell version of survival right there. Oh, something dead and big on the road. Just a bird. Okay. So then, we're human. We're very intelligent critters, forest creatures. We are quite inventive as well, quite ingenious in many ways. And when it comes to feeling good, it all sort of gets a bit unravelled here for us. Our best laid plans, so to speak, come undone. One of the interesting findings in psychology, if I remember this correctly, was the experiment done where a rat would touch a rat could press a lever and an electrical current would stimulate the zone of its brain that would in effect give the rat or the mouse an orgasm. Right? This study cracks me up in a way. And the rat or the mouse, I can't remember which it was, let's just go with rat. The rat presses the button and receives it receives an orgasm. If only it were that easy, hey. And obviously that's a feel-good emotion or feeling or a pleasure response. And the researchers were just very interested in to see what the response would be. You know, would it... How often would it press the lever? And the rat in the experiment presses this lever, he has an orgasm, and immediately learns in one trial, like just boom, orgasm on the lever, presses it again, and then within nanoseconds, it's just pressing this lever as fast and as furious as it can to receive the to live in a constant state of orgasm. Wouldn't that just be... That'd be the life. So, and why haven't they invented this for humans yet? Damn it. Anyway, so the point of this small sideline into the sexual preferences of rats was that the human or the organism as it is can get very, I don't know, I don't want to say irresponsible, but easily overwhelmed or convinced that pleasure is good for the organism, we could say. The feelings of pleasure are good for the organism. It's not always the case, though. Just ask any drug addict. And I believe the rats in the experiment died. I shouldn't laugh. It had too many orgasms. I don't even, is that a thing? I don't know. Okay, so the organisms can be a bit overwhelmed with the whole positivity thing. But the point of this whole sideline, you might say, is whenever something is rewarding to us, the mind is very sneaky. It tells the narrative that this is what I need. This is somehow important to me. Right? And that is... I don't know what you would call that. I call it sneaky. I call it concerning. It's the organism is very naive. We don't know really what is good for us or what is bad for us. We take it on good faith that our body will figure that out by sending us the appropriate emotional responses. But the fact is, some people's emotional responses are maladapted to a positive life. They're getting rewards from things that are harmful or harmful to others, and vice versa. So the question for the seeker is constantly, what is good for me that I need to repeat, and what is bad that I need to repeatedly avoid, if that makes sense. That question is like survival priority question number one on the mind of the organism. It's hardwired into that human forest creature brain thing. It's what we are, I wouldn't say born to do, but in a way we are. That is it. That is prime directive 1. And some people call this avoid pain and seek pleasure, but I really wanted to labour this point. The organism, and the second point is that the organism is naive to it. It takes it on good faith that what it's doing is good and what it's avoiding is bad. And does get it wrong, and does occasionally die as a result of getting it wrong. So, being a conservative species, usually, we would rather have false positives than not. But what I mean by false positives is we'd rather think there's something wrong and get it wrong, rather than ignore the signals that something's wrong and get that wrong and die. If there's a rustling in the bushes nearby, you'd might as well think it's a lion. Even though you might not live in a country with lions, you might as well assume that, because then your survival is kind of, your survival odds are increased by taking that line of thought, so to speak. Even though you can laugh at yourself later how silly you were to think, oh, that was a lion. Could have been a wild dog, could have been an enemy of some kind, but most likely it was probably the wind, or a small animal that sounded really big for some reason. So we're very sensitive. Prime directive 1, avoid punishment, seek pleasure, which is in essence survive and don't die. We're not very good at it, but we take the body's signals on good faith that the body knows what it's doing. The body signals the body through thought and emotion. In thought, remembering is a very powerful sort of medium of communication. It can send all sorts of interesting fantasies and images into your mind to signal avoid, to signal to the body avoid, and so forth. But we're very sophisticated too, we're very intelligent, so we like to systematize our survival if we can. And you'll notice this across the board in most cultures. They try and make survival as easy as possible. In the Western culture, I mean, we've really taken it to the nth degree with large industrial farming complexes. We have a lot of risk management is done in Western culture with a lot of rules and regulations designed to protect I was going to say stupidity, let's go with naivety of most people. It's like a gradual wrapping of everything in cotton wool in Western culture. And people from Western cultures get very nervous in non-Western cultures where the rules are a bit lax, where someone could shoot you just for the hell of it. We don't like going there. So in the Western culture, we have this wonderful notion of, because we're systematizing and seemingly making life easier and more comfortable continually, that we're making life work. We're making our life work. And it's a very intoxicating idea. Because we're surviving and because we're getting pleasure responses from positive things that we do, we feel like generally we're making life work. And the fantasy is very powerful, and so powerful, this overlaps into mental health, that I often see people who've had accidents who've then become depressed or suicidal after an accident. One of the funny things that they say, and funny in quotes funny, is that why did this happen to me? And this is funny to them, strange to them, in that they had thought that they lived in a safe and predictable world up until their accident. And suddenly the accident shattered the fantasy that this was a safe and predictable world. But not only that, not only had it shattered it, it had powerfully told them that they were doing life wrong. That's why they had an accident. Isn't it interesting? So that fantasy is very pernicious, we might say, very sneaky. It gets in very easily. The idea that you're doing your life well, you're making your life work because you're avoiding danger and you're seeking pleasure and it's working. It must mean that you're doing your life well. And this also overlaps into Western spirituality, very much Western spirituality, where the seeking of spirituality, the seeking of enlightenment, the seeking of God, falls nicely into that spectrum as well. That I'm making everything else work, more or less. I've got a pretty good job. I'm joined the middle class, which is great. I've got a reasonable mortgage, which is great. I've got 2.5 kids, which I'm very happy about. 0.5 child, I'm not so happy about, just having a pair of legs. But, got a nice wife. She's very pretty. People compliment me on my wife's beauty all the time, which makes me feel important and successful. All that great Western thought about which in essence is your prime directive at the nth degree of the spectrum, the survival. I'm surviving well, really, really well, basically. And the fantasy is that I'm doing all that. We forget that the body is pretty much the intelligence there. And we live in this dream that we're doing all that. We're making our life work. We're avoiding danger. We're seeking pleasure. And we get a little bit ahead of ourselves. We decide we're going to seek the ultimate pleasure. We're going to seek God, or we're going to seek enlightenment. And this falls, broadly speaking, on the spectrum of ultimate survival for the organism. This is epic survival. This is meta survival. I'm going to transcend life and survive, I think, for eternity, with enlightenment. And I'm going to do it because I'm from the West. I'm going to systematize it and figure out how it's done, and then just follow the steps and do it, because that's what we do in the West. We lay down patterns of behavior for others to follow in books, instructional manuals, and we have a bit of risk management in there because we're safe. We're a safe culture. But then it all seems to be a bit funny. The wonderful ideas that we'd come into spirituality with don't seem to hold much water suddenly. There's no... We try all our usual tactics. We try and be very good. Let's try and be honest. I'll try and be honest. How about that? I'll be good. I'll be humble. I'll be the most humble person there is on the block. I'll be ethical. I'll be moral and I'll be ethical. I don't know what that is, but I'll make up a code that on the face of it seems moral and noble and ethical, and I'll just follow those steps. And if I follow those steps, I will be rewarded with positivity from not only from recognition from my peers, how noble Mr. Smith is next door, but I'll feel sort of that nice little warm inner glow that I know I'm doing the right thing. I'm on the right path. But enlightenment is a bit peculiar. The first thing that you notice with endeavour is it doesn't work very well in the whole enlightenment game. The programming that you're running the show by, that's been around for millions, maybe billions of years, of avoid pain and seek pleasure, holds no water, holds no weight in this enlightenment game. Indeed, any process, any idea that you're going to do this holds no weight. All the fantasies that you're making your life work, and this is the final extension of that plan, holds no weight. Holds no weight at all. And suddenly it's all a bit miserable. And like the person I referred to who'd had an accident and was now miserable, what had they done wrong? This is now the danger, in quotes danger, for the seeker. Because they will hit that wall hard in spirituality. They will not get enlightened. The seeker will never be enlightened. And that will hurt. That will really hurt. All your noble, ethical, well-behaved, well-intentioned attempts, all the efforts to increase spiritual power, whatever that is, hit a wall. Enlightenment is not for the seeker. It is not for the person. Enlightenment does not care about the person at all. Doesn't care. Doesn't give two hoots about this ethical, noble, honest, moral, well-behaved, middle-class person you think you are. And like the person who'd had an accident and couldn't quite believe it, that is probably going to happen in your spiritual search. You will hit a wall and you won't quite believe it. Why did this happen to me? Why am I not enlightened? I've done everything I can think of for 30 years, 40, 50 years. I've meditated. I've done it all. I've used the same mode of thinking that I've been programmed to use because I'm a human and a Westerner. This is for Western people, obviously. And it hasn't worked. It's worked for the species for billions of years, millions of years. I don't know how old the species are. But it won't work for spirituality suddenly. I don't know what to do suddenly in this whole arena. And there you have it. You don't know what to do. You just don't know what to do. I'm going to repeat that one last time. You don't know what to do. Thanks for listening. Hope you have a great day.